Welcome back to
Moving
the Moving
Soulward, the
Soulward
podcast about
podcast.
growing a
This week we
business
have
at the
Marguerite
intersection of
Insolia as
strategy,
our guest.
spirituality,
And
and
Marguerite
self-care.
is a
We're
fourth
your
generation
hosts, Katie
healer by
McLaughlin,
way
your
of
Be Good
Celtic and
Guide,
Sicilian
and
bloodlines.
Marie
Marguerite
is
is
a
a
keeper,
tarot, energy healer,
We have
and
a good
oracle of the
inspirational story, but
Akasha.
we're
And
not
her
interested in
passion
just profits
is
or
to
bottom
remind
lines.
women
So don't get us wrong.
lovingly,
Those things are
without
important.
judgment,
In Moving
that
Soulward,
inner
expect to
wisdom
hear
is not new
conversations
to
with
any of us.
entrepreneurs who are
And she
all
will
different
hand
stages
your
of building a
remembering
business.
back to
With
you.
two
In
important
this
conversation, we talk about tarot, clairvoyance, Reiki, the Akashic Records, cord cutting, and how she used her own magic to find out that she became pregnant naturally after doctors told her it would never happen.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I would love, now grab your favorite
In your
card
words,
deck
from your
a warm
own
mug,
mouth, spark
give
up a
us
candle,
a description of what you do for the audience.
It's interesting. My father was just recently in Sicily with my mom.
Okay, I am so
And
excited
one
about
of my
this. Maria,
cousins there
how
was saying,
pumped are
like,
you that
oh
we're
yeah, I follow her on
doing
social
a
media. So I see the Casa della
podcast
Madre
called Moving
brand,
Soulward.
and
I
I
see
am
her
so
work
excited.
there,
I've been
but
looking
what
forward
exactly
to
does
this
she
for a couple
do?
of
And my
months.
father, who
I know
He's
we've
like a
talked about this a
businessman,
lot over the
everything. He's a
past
Virgo.
year as
Everything
we've been
is
building out Soulward
is very
Summit, which
logical for him.
is
At the same time,
in
he's
March
Sicilian and
2025.
superstition,
And we've talked about different
he
ways that we
is a huge part of my
can
work actually, and
communicate
has
or
these
connect with the
gifts.
community.
but he was saying what
and
she does
bring
is she
more
works
soulpreneurs,
primarily
spiritual
with women
entrepreneurs, business owners who are a
in
little woo-woo
Having them
together and
remember their
learn from
own
each other and
truth and
grow
self-worth.
and
And I was like,
really
yes, that's
create an
exactly it. He didn't
environment
go
that
into
is
tarot.
fostering that
He didn't go into
support
like
and
she
that community.
channels.
So
She
I really
does
feel like
Akashic
this is
record
going to
work, but
be
really
a
the bottom line
huge
is
step
that what I really
forward
care about
in
doing
being
is
able to
having
bring
people
that in more of a
remember
regular cadence than
their
just the
truth,
once
like
a year
that
summit.
spark that we have
a
as
step
kids,
forward and a
where we're
step
like,
forward.
oh,
Did you guys have that?
See what
Did you
you
guys
did there,
have
Brooke?
that feeling when you were a kid where you realized
What's one
that
of the
you
things
were
that you're
connected
looking
to
forward to
everything and that
most?
you could
Or
talk
looking
to the
forward
butterfly?
to
Like my
most
4-year-old
with
talks
the
to
podcast?
butterflies, and she believes that.
I think
And so I think my work is
asking
bringing us back
questions
to that place
of
of
these
magic
entrepreneurs that you wouldn't
and
maybe normally
remembering how
ask if
powerful
you
we
were
are.
sitting down.
And I do that
and
through
maybe if you were sitting
divination,
down
and I
having
do
coffee or
that
tea,
through
but tarot,
not,
I do
in
that
the
through
context of
Akashic
just
record
like
work. I
getting
do
to
that
know
through
someone
Reiki,
and
I
having
think
the
that's
body
kind
really
of the
speak
beauty
to me
of
and tell me what
podcast.
energetically
In
is going
connection
on.
with
And
the
then
summit, we started
on
doing
that
these lives
blends
with
into
different
what
people
is
that were
mentally going on,
we were going to
what's
be
physically
featuring in the
going on.
summit, and doing
Also,
Instagram Live
also
is
part of
great, but
that
it's hard to like
remembrance
keep your
is
phone
remembering
on
how
and keep
powerful we
track of and go
are,
back to
not
an
just in this
episode. And so the
dimension,
beauty of the podcast will
but
be
in
that we can
all
have those
dimensions,
same
and that
types
we
of
really are
really cool
interdimensional,
conversations
multidimensional
in a better way.
creatures. A
I
huge part of
totally
this
agree. And I
lifetime
think
is
that
remembering
really
that
digging under the
truth,
hood, like
and that
we've
we
had some great
are
conversations,
able
especially with the
to work in other
speakers, but
dimensions and
being able to
create
look under the
heaven
hood
on
and
earth
ask
is
those
what
like
I've been
crunchier
really
questions,
into
like
recently. It sounds so basic,
clients,
heaven
how
on
did
earth,
you
but
learn how
really
to do
I've just
this?
been
How did you,
so
what are you working
so
towards?
focused
What
on
is
heaven
your
on earth
version of
recently.
success look like?
I
I
don't
want
even
to
read that.
really understand
Yeah. I
more
think for me,
about
at
people
least
in
as a
this
kid, I
space
don't remember
and how they're making
necessarily
things
talking
happen because a
to
lot of people in this space are
butterflies. I
creating a
remember
new
having
path
a witch
forward,
club with
right?
a friend
It's
in elementary
not
school,
the,
but
you know,
I also
Harvard
just
Business
remember
School
being
playbook that you're going to be
very like
hearing.
unashamed,
And I think those are the
uninhibited,
most
just
fascinating
dance
pieces
the way I
of
wanted
these
to
people's
dance and
stories.
sing the way I wanted to sing.
Absolutely.
And
And
like
for
I said,
someone, it might be
unashamed, that they
unafraid
get to
to
travel
do all
6
of those
months out of
things
the
and be
year, and
myself
that
before
was
all
their
that
ultimate
conditioning
goal.
came in.
And
For
yeah.
someone else, it is
Yeah, I
finding
also, it's funny, I
the
also had the
balance
witch
that
club or
works the
witch
best
friends, and we
in
would
terms of
make
managing
spell
their
books,
family
and
and
but it
also
was
their
like
work life,
now
and
I
being
connect
able
that
to
back to the
interweave,
earliest
their passion into
stages
their
of
day
like
every day, despite
manifestation
having
stuff.
other
Like we would speak
obligations. So
things
I can't wait
into
to
truth,
hear
and we
just all the
would
different
talk to the trees and
versions
talk
of
to
success
the
that
be
are out
like,
there.
this stick is
100%.
magical,
And I
then it
also think
became
there's some
magical. It
interesting
was like that
things in
connection
not
to not
necessarily
only our
origin
words
stories.
but
A
to
lot of
nature and like our
people
environment around
talk about
us.
how did you first
So
get
yeah, I
started.
find
I want to
returning
know
to
like
that
how
being
people
very
learn the
powerful.
For
things that
sure.
they're learning.
Yeah.
So
I think that's
if
just our
you are
natural way
learning
of
Vedic
being. Like
astrology,
I had
or
the
you
witch
learn
club, I had
sound
the
healing, or you
potion
learn
making thing, and it was just
hypnotherapy,
like, this
like
is what I
where,
remember doing.
what did that look
Some
like?
part of me
Because a
remembers
lot
that
of
this
these
is what we
things
do.
are non-traditional
And then,
educational
and
paths,
then
or
having
there's
like lame
other
adults. Thankfully,
mentors
my
or
parents weren't
apprenticeships, or
lame
like
adults. So the random
what
babysitter
sort
come over and
of
be like, no,
stepping
you don't do
stones does
that.
it take
That's
to
not real.
get someone from
in those little
I'm interested
dimming
in doing
moments.
this. I feel
Yeah.
called to heal in this way, or
Well,
I
I
feel
love
called to
that
help in this
so many
way.
healers and folks in
Now
this
I'm going to learn how to
universe,
do
you are
it. Where do I go to
multi-hyphenate,
learn
but
how
I'm
to do
curious
it?
what
And
came
then
first.
to
Was
make a
it
business out
the
of it is
Reiki?
like
Was it
another
tarot?
leap.
Which
So
was like
I'm
the
really excited to
start,
hear
and then
that
how did it
that sort of
progress?
trajectory and how
So
people created their own
professionally,
path,
what
for
came
sure.
first was Reiki. I'm a very
I'm
type
also
A
interested
kind of
too,
person,
along
actually,
kind of a
and
similar
that's
lines.
the system
If
I was
it's
raised into.
if we have
What's
a
your
Vedic
education? What's your
astrologer and an
diploma?
energy
Then you
healer
get that
and all
job,
these
and then you
different
follow these steps, A to B to C,
teachers and
that
guides,
works for me in a
what
lot
the
of
most
ways. So
common
I
thread they
had
see
always
in their
this
own
thing where
clients
spirits would
is?
come in.
Because I'm
As a kid, I would
guessing
have
that those
deceased
things
loved
will continue to
ones
come up regardless
that
of the
either I
modality
knew
or
or
the
other
training or
people
whatever it is
knew in
that
my
they're
family that I had
practicing.
not met because I was a child
100%, because
come
the
to me
people
and give
in
me
this
messages
space
for people in my
are
family.
working
And so these
on
things were
contributing
always
to not
happening to
only
me. And it was
individual
just a
like
part of who I
wellness
was. And
and well-being and
thankfully my
consciousness, but
parents weren't,
really contributing to the
mostly my
collective
mom was,
consciousness
she
and
never
how
shamed me
we
for it or
can,
told me I was
raise
crazy
up
for
that
it. So it always
vibration
stayed there. So
of
while I did maybe
everyone.
have that
So
babysitter
that
that
I
would
think
dim that
we're
light, I was
in a
always able to be
very
like, yeah, but she just
interesting
doesn't
period of
get it.
time being an
So it
astrologer
stayed alive within me.
around
And
what is
then
no
I
longer
was
working
I was at
for humans
NYU,
and the
and
structures that we've
my
set up
roommate's
versus
mom was a
where
Reiki
we want to be
practitioner,
moving
and
and
she would
how we want to be
sometimes just
moving.
call
And
us out of
so
nowhere, and
I think
she'd
this will
talk to
just
her daughter,
be
my roommate, and
a really
one of my
amazing
best
way to
friends, and
tap
she'd
in
say,
and get
"Hey, let Marguerite know she
some
needs to have
guidance,
more
some
water because
advice,
she's about to get sick,"
I want to hear
or
about
something
the hard
little
parts,
like
the
that.
good
It was
parts,
always
all of
spot
it.
on, and yeah, I was like, "Wait a
Absolutely.
minute, so she
So
does this
we're
for her
launching
job?"
weekly episodes. Join us,
Like, you can do
subscribe,
that? So when
follow,
I graduated,
and
I
we look forward to moving
had
soulward.
moved from New York
Yes, we
City
do.
to Knoxville, Tennessee, weirdly. My partner at the time, my boyfriend at the time, was an artist, a painter, and he got a job at the university there teaching. So we were there for 6 months. And so I was in this place where I didn't really have to go get a job because we had university housing. And it was, oh my gosh, I'm living in the South. I'm from Boston and was in New York. And now I'm in the South, and this is so exciting. So I went and studied how to become like a professional Reiki practitioner. And I did all the classes because I felt like if I didn't have the classes, then I couldn't say that I did this thing, of course. But while I was in the classes, I realized what they were talking about were things that I was already doing, that I had been already doing, that I never had the words for. But I had a real hard time owning it as a part of myself, as something that other people would see me as, because I was focused on acting, and I'd had this idea that if I told people I did this other thing, they wouldn't take my acting seriously. And then on the back burner of all of that, I'm Italian, and tarot is actually an Italian divination tool. It started in Italy, and it's something that my cousins taught me when I was in high school. I remember actually when I got my first tarot deck from my cousin, she said, in our tradition of tarot in our family, you have to be given your first deck. You can't go purchase it. You have to be given by a loved one. And she's flipping through the cards, and she taught me how to do it that summer because I was so invested, right? And figuring out, wait a minute, what? They believe that? And then we go out and we test it. And oh my gosh, they did. That was, so we would connect the dots and we learned. And then it became a language for me. So I've always had that as this thing, those gifts we have that we don't take seriously because they're just part of who we are. So there's that programming around, maybe they're not important because I don't have to struggle for this thing. So it was on the back burner. And eventually, as an actor, I was like, listen, I don't want to be a hostess anymore in LA. I'm like fast forwarding a few years from New York to Tennessee to LA. And I can actually get paid for this thing that I'm really good at. And I should just do that. And this miraculous thing happened, which is actually not miraculous. It's just how the universe and the world works. But because I was now being honest and like authentic about who I was as a whole person, and not just being like, I'm an actor who does comedy and I also do drama work. Ha! And then also I can read your mind and channel and split myself in two. When I put it together, people just started understanding me more, and I started booking more work. And it was like, oh, now we get who you were. And so it really opened things up. And then from there, I went on to Akashic record work, which was a wild, anything about it. And then within 1 week, I had 5 different people come up to me talking about Akashic record work, which even now, a lot of people don't know what the Akashic records are. But at the time, it was really obscure. And I had 1 week of so many people coming up to me and being like, you know how to do this. You need to do this. Or I'm going to open your records. Are you okay with me opening your records and stuff like that? So I started doing that training because for me, it's like I have to have the diploma in order to ask somebody for money for this. Otherwise, it's not okay, which I have since figured out is a limitation. I help actually now people work through that limitation.
I feel like something that you said, having to have the certificate or the diploma in order to do the thing, is something that so many of us can relate to. It's like this element of having to prove yourself or something.
Right, exactly. Prove myself. Somebody else told me I'm good at this and that I know how to do this. So now you can trust me because I maybe trust myself now because this other person gave me permission to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. I got this external validation. So now I'm good.
Right. Exactly.
Really interesting too with that, with specifically in this type of work, right? Because already is same for me. I was looking at, these are the steps that I'm supposed to take in my life, right? I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a degree, I'm going to work, all the things. And then when you start to sort of play around and explore with these different modalities, there's people who get it, but there's a much larger number of people who don't. And so there's already sort of that questioning of legitimacy, or this is other. And so I think that we often try to use the training to unother it. Like we're using the authority of a traditional path to create authority in a non-traditional path. And it doesn't really, it's not really how that works, or how you don't need a certificate. Now there's knowledge. Like I took a sound healing class and my teacher was a musician. She's also speaking at the summit, Casey Lane. And so the knowledge she had around resonance and dissonance, now that is something that is knowledge that you need to be able to play bowls and have the effect that you want them to have. So in the same way that when working with tarot, understanding the journey between for each suit, like understanding that is like a hero's journey, and that there's different impact, like there's knowledge, but it's not that knowledge needs to necessarily be passed to you in a traditional schooling setting. And it's often like you had described, not, oh, now I'm going to learn this thing. You're only, for me at least, I have that now I'm going to learn this thing because of the synchronicities. I'm hearing 7 people tell me about a new thing I had never heard of that just has that internal resonance to it. Oh, this is something that I need to dig into, whether it's something I need to experience for myself and not become a practitioner in, but experience and learn and understand, or something that I need to pursue as knowledge. And then you sort of go down the rabbit hole. And then I had never thought of it as the remembering what you would already know, but that feels very spot on for me. Like when I started reading tarot and combining with oracle decks, and the way that I work with those tools, it's not because I've seen anyone else work with those tools that way. It's like my natural inclination that brings like that I'm bringing into the work, that no one ever taught me that. I just inherently know what I need to do to be able to work with the tools. So that's really amazing.
I think it can be like a real limitation. I've had clients that I've worked through in my kind of how I work with tarot. And if you pick up like Tarot for Dummies, which I think is a book that exists, that is the most boring reading. Like a client, like if you're going down the path of actually having this be something that you offer for clients, and you're using this system to do it, and you're not following your own, using the different oracle decks and like the tarot and having all the different elements that make sense for you. So because your channel is your own channel, and if you're using somebody else's channel, that is basically most likely, and with tarot it has become a patriarchal system. Like you cut off parts of yourself and parts of the knowing. That is such a disservice to your client. So yeah, we can have these things and we're like, see, no, it's real. See, for me, it's look, like this is a training and I did this thing. And now all the things that like I would see as a kid, like now it makes sense to me because I've done these things. Right. And he's okay. Yeah. Okay. A lot of the world falls into that. And it's just, what a bummer. So I try to help people help people have the confidence to follow their own channel, because that information is not going to come through you in a powerful way unless you're actually confident in your own channel and how that channel works.
Can you talk about, because I know that you do cord cutting work is how you describe it. So how does that, it sounds so interesting. Can you tell us more about that and how it weaves into what we've been chatting about?
It's some of my favorite work. Yeah. Basically, it started in doing energy work. And when I first started my energy work, when I first started Reiki, I was working one-on-one with people, like in physical space with them. And I realized that because I'm clairaudient, I was getting a lot of noise. Basically, I was hearing them while I was doing the work, and I was hearing their voice and their human voice, as well as what was coming in through their physical body and their field. And it was creating actual noise, static, where I eventually had to have, again, the confidence to say, my work will be more powerful if you're not sitting in my space. Like if you're physically not within my space. And then I started having clients in Miami and different in New York and whatever on Zoom. And the work, that information that was coming through on those remote sessions was so much more holistic, where I was getting spirit guides coming in and I could hear things really clearly, and I could see the energy and I could see the chakras, and I was doing the Reiki work, but I was also channeling at the same time, and it was becoming this new thing. So I transitioned to doing remote sessions where even if I had a client in LA, literally if they were down the street from me, they would be in their living room or wherever, their bedroom, and I'd be in my office. And I started at that point seeing chords pop up. And basically how I explain that is patterns that are in our lives, energetic patterns that are often either connected to a person or it can be connected to a circumstance, anything that's carrying enough energy within itself to have its own storyline, and then our bodies and our fields. So I began to remove cords, and I call it cord cutting. Sometimes I'm cutting the cord, like that's the visual of it, and I can watch and see how it's working. So this week, it's been a lot of extractions where I'm pulling. So cord cutting work can be hugely transformative, and really, it's such rewarding work because I feel it, and then I get to watch them. You're like, oh my gosh, it's real. It's real. At that energy I felt around that person, I was always so drained after being around them, and now I understand why. I was literally they were pulling or siphoning my energy, or actually trying to control me through it. Yeah. The same time, it can be really humbling work on my side because some of these people have entities working through them, which isn't something that I go into much. But Maria, we talked about this, about the evil eye, and
Mm-hmm.
it's been a big, that's been a big lesson this last year and a half for me. Because sometimes I'll do a cord cutting and I'll have the energy of that person. I've had one time so I have two children. I have two babies that they're 4 and 2, but they're my babies. But at the time, my oldest was a baby when I had this woman show up as a demon in my office with my baby in my house. And I am like fierce and I'm fiery, and like I use that energy on in the other dimensions. And it's part of why I'm really good at cord cutting is because I take zero bullshit. Like I don't care what realm you're from, it's not happening. But I have really good boundaries like within my space. So I'm always asking for permission on the other side because I think that really solidifies the cord and cuts it so that they're not trying to reattach. But sometimes they don't like it and they'll show up and try to mess with me. The other day, I have a good story on this. It just happened. The other day, I had a client, we were doing cord cutting. And because I'm home with my kids, I'm often doing it at night after my kids are asleep. And I finished her cord cutting. It felt really good. I had that woman who, on the other side of that session, who was really like, she was really adamant. She even was trying to cloud what I was seeing. So I called in a lot of protection. I did the work and it felt really good. So I closed the session. I'm getting ready to go to bed. I get in bed and all of a sudden we co-sleep, and my baby next to me, she was not sick. She started vomiting everywhere. She threw up the entire night. And I felt, for me, go after me, but you go after my kids. It's like a major threat, right? Like that, there's nothing worse for me as a person, practitioner, like human, than something happening to my kids. So it was a threat and I knew it, right? She was like very clear. Oh yeah, you're going to mess with me? I'm going after your kid. So when I say humbling, like it's humbling, you can interact with some energies that are powerful, and you really have to put up strong protection. And I did that work with my baby, and she woke up the next morning and she was totally fine. And she hasn't been sick since. She wasn't actually sick. It was a threat.
That's incredible. It sounds like as you are going sort of deeper into your own remembrance and deeper into your work, then you're encountering new things that you're like, okay, this is the next thing that I need to remember that I have mastery over. And without going to a formal training, are you just looking within? Are you like, what is your sort of like practice to hone in your own skills look like these days
Mhm.
that you're not going to a formal training or you're not, are you asking other people for how they do it and then figuring out yourself, or how are you navigating that?
I really equate all of this to a language, to like an alphabet. So I can learn Spanish, and then how is Spanish going to sound in my body and when I speak and with my mouth, so with my
Mhm.
mouth structure, my native language, and it comes out in a different way. And so I practice it in different ways and I use it oftentimes with clients. I'll pull in different things. So they'll sign up online and they'll be like, okay, we're doing it. I call my Reiki practice, my Reiki sessions now, I call them energetic harmonizations because they stopped being just Usui Reiki, which is my lineage. And they became, I'm channeling and I'm also seeing this. And then who knows, your grandmother might want to tell you something. And just because you paid me that thing, like I'm not going to not let your grandmother talk to you. So I've just brought in all of my gifts to really what my focus is helping the person. Yeah. So I think basically to answer your question, I use my work mostly for my family now. And then when I'm using it for clients, I'm learning every single time. Every
Mhm.
single time. I have
Yeah, it
this
sounds
like
like I find similar for me. I'll encounter a new modality or new language or a new tool. And then it's that like integration back into my own practice and how I want to use it. It's like having an example of how to use something. And then you're like, cool, that's great. Like you hand mix your whipped cream and I use a different, I'm going to put it in the KitchenAid.
I
And
was just gonna
so,
say, that is what it is. It's like a recipe
yeah,
and they like it a little more salty and you're like,
right.
no, but it should actually have cayenne pepper in it. And that's what
Right.
works for me. And yeah.
Yeah, and you're connecting it back to your flavor profiles, your heritage, where your experience. So, I mean, we talked about Reiki, cord cutting, tarot. Is it, and it sounds like people come to you maybe with feeling blocked or with a trauma or with, how are you, would you describe sort of what the clientele is coming to you with generally? And then what's the impact that they have after working with you? What does that look like?
Yeah. So for a long time, I had so within myself, right? I had to come out of the closet of doing my work. And then I had to, as an actor, I think too, it was like I wanted to really be in community with people too, and like really get down and create a space because I was having such intimacy with my clients. But I was like, oh, what we need is a sisterhood here where because I was so healing for me, right? To be working with people and being like, oh my gosh, this person who we're like seeing on TV and we think is, and whatever the stories are, is actually totally freaked out about this guy that is not calling her back. And she's
Mhm.
paying me right now for this thing that my other client, who is my neighbor down the street who works at the grocery store, the exact same storyline. And we have basically this nonsense that we carry around from programming from the world about whatever the thing is that they want us to think. And I wanted to create a sisterhood, like a community of people. So I started what I thought really was the main focus at the time was a lot of relationship stuff. And so I created a course called Siren Call. And it was my first kind of online community course. And from there, and from the results that we were getting with people, suddenly like LA is not an easy place to date. But I used the tools I used for myself and calling in my husband. It was like a manifestation work and really getting down to the authenticity of who you actually are and removing all of those pieces around self-worth and what you deserve. And so I think I would say a lot of my clients are coming for that and because they've heard about that work, focused on relationships. And after doing that, because manifesting anything is really manifesting like anything. So
Yeah.
you can work on relationships, but we would like these clients would come in, we'd be working on their traumas, releasing this thing and releasing that energy, that memory that was like they believed to be true for themselves, but was really something that came online when they were 6 and they thought it was real, but it wasn't real. It was somebody else's imprint. We were releasing all this stuff. And all of a sudden they're getting promoted and they're getting monies flowing in at the same time. So I did the work, focused work on relationships. And then I moved on to a different pod that I offered that focused on career.
That's amazing. I see the visualization that I have is like a box of jewelry and it's all tangled, and then you start to untangle one and then you find another tangle, and it is sort of all connected. So, and what everyone is working towards is that sort of alignment. And so the entry point might be my love life's a problem and I need help. And then the work that you're doing is actually alignment work and getting them into a place of alignment and manifestation. And then that translates into so many other areas of their life. But I do think it's interesting that the relationship side of things is like that like dangling carrot of the, okay, I need help fixing this. And then they get so much more through your services.
Yeah. And I think it probably goes back to this idea within myself where I can't offer something that I don't know firsthand works. If I haven't used this successfully within my own life, I can't offer it to other people and have them pay me money for this thing. So it started with relationships into career. And really, I would say in the last 5 years, and I think this is just how God works through me too, and like how my body on this planet likes to experience things. But I randomly had this feeling that I needed to go to the doctor and have blood work done 6 years ago. And I'm terrified. For my whole entire life, I've been terrified of doctors. I had this idea when I was a kid, and I'm from a family of doctors too, that I had to marry a obstetrician because I would never trust a doctor to ever deliver my baby. This was like my old programming before I moved into a completely different space of around birth. I'm a doula as well. But so I had this idea that I would never trust a doctor enough to ever go and deliver a baby with them. So I had to marry one because that would be the only person I could ever trust. That's how bad my idea is around like white coat people. So I went to the gynecologist. I was like, I keep on feeling like I need this blood work done. I don't know why. It was like that same voice that I channel on the record saying, go do this. So I eventually did. And he came back totally shocked. He didn't want to do the blood work because he said there was no reason for it. I had him do all my panels because I was like, I don't know what is there. Hopefully nothing. And he came back and he was like, you're in menopause. You're 32, but you're in menopause. And I was like, what? And he's like, you get your period, so it doesn't make sense, but your blood work says that you have 0 eggs and that you're in menopause. And I'm so sorry, but if you ever want to have children, it will only be through adoption. These numbers are terrible and they only get worse the older you get. So that's it. There's no hope here.
Really improving your perception of white coats with that one.
But I had to do all this work to figure out on every level, like mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, how I was going to become pregnant. Because this thing on the 3D did not make any sense to me. And I did all my homework. Like I went then to a fertility specialist and had her look at everything. And she was like, yeah, you have a 4% chance of ever conceiving ever. So this was 6 years ago. And I like stopped my life because I always wanted to have kids. And I just focused completely on fertility, on natural fertility. Like those numbers were real. Like I went to a bunch of different people that look at my blood and it said the same thing, but that realm wasn't strong enough because I did all the work in the other realms. And so now a lot of my work now is helping women conceive when they believe that they can't or have had a hard time conceiving or have had miscarriages, and talking to the babies on the other side who they have miscarried and how to integrate that trauma, as a lot of it has to do with sacral chakra trauma stuff. It's hard to conceive when you have all these other stories within that space that are telling different stories about your worth and like whether or not you are safe and all these different things. So that's the other thing that I now do is really I've moved from funnily enough, when all that happened, I was in a training for becoming a birth doula. So I was really getting, it was all lining up like, hey, now you're going to start focusing on fertility, even though you're 32 and you don't want to you're not married, you're not engaged. None of this is happening, but guess what? It is going to happen. And let's get on board. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you for an example of a client success story or transformational experience, but I think you are that story.
So she was like that fertility specialist. We went in her office in Beverly Hills and she was like, you're a 4% chance. And we did all this stuff, like looked at my husband's sperm and who is now my husband at the time. Anyway, we're in the office. She's you have a 4% chance, and every month you're losing another egg. So we need to start IVF right now. And I was like, I've never even tried to become pregnant. What do you mean? I'm going to try on my own. And she was like, we don't have time for you to try on your own because it will not work. We have to start right now because next month you have another egg that's gone and you have no eggs. And so I was like, because I'm terrified of IVF. I'm terrified of needles. I'm terrified of you, bro. No. So I was like, listen, I'm going to try to conceive on my own. And she said, I will give you 3 months. Can you imagine like the audacity? But also she truly believed it. She thought she was doing what was best for me. She thought I had no time. So she said, I'll give you 3 months. In 3 months, call me. And we're starting IVF right away. And I was like, okay. So now here I was. And she was like, get pregnant right now. But you won't. And so we tried to conceive that month and we conceived. And I was pregnant. And then I had a miscarriage. And had a miscarriage at 7 weeks. I was devastated, of course, as we all are. But part of me believed, oh, I had a miscarriage because my eggs are terrible. And so that will always be the case for me. So I grieved that. And I knew I had to like fully release that before I could try again. And then a couple months later, I felt strong enough. So we tried again. And then I conceived my daughter, who is 4.5. Again, the first try. And then truly my baby it's funny because she's just, I talked to my midwife about it and I don't know how that's real, but I believe you. But I was not ovulating when she was conceived. I don't know how. And how I found out I was pregnant with her was I was crying one day and my husband's like, you need some time for yourself. And I was like, yeah, I do. I don't know what's wrong. Something's wrong. I'm exhausted. And he's like, why don't you just take a nap? And I'm going to take her to the playground. I was just like, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting my period or I don't know what's going on. And I'm falling asleep and I fell asleep. And then I heard my name. And so I woke up. I'm home by myself. I woke up and next to me is this has happened. This was the second time it had happened to me. So next to me was like a 8-foot tall Virgin Mary statue in my room. And I was like, oh, I know this because it happened to me when I was 19. She told me I was going to be okay. And then the next couple of days I started remembering being raped and I had fully repressed it. So she comes to me this time and she puts her hand on my belly and she says, have no fear, you are with child. And I was like, oh, and I'm like, oh my gosh, of course I am. What? Oh. And then she disappears and I get my phone and I just write to my husband, baby. And he wrote back, no kidding. No way. Really? It was like, all I needed to say was like, I was about to say like, baby, oh my gosh. Mary just showed up in our room and just told me, and he was like, oh, like he knew. And so that was my pregnancy test because I was so early that there was no way I could actually test. Yeah. So that
is incredible. I'm curious, this really is a great segue into something that I've been thinking about, which is your Italian background and Sicilian background and kind of the Catholic side of the Italian tradition and the spirituality side and how you integrate or manage the duality there.
Yeah. So when I went to college, I mainly focused on art history. And in art history, art was created originally as a form of reverence. And so it was mainly deities that were created. And so a lot of when you're studying art history and you're going back into actual history, it's not just like a painting of a horse or whatever. It's like this God or Jesus or whatever focus you're on. And so I loved all of that and studying my work. And I had gone to Catholic school and my mom is Irish Catholic from Boston, like one of 6 kids. That world, I went to Catholic school for high school for 2 years until I like fully combusted and was like, I can't do this anymore. But anyway, so I ended up doing comparative religion and going down that study of different religions. And I started with Judaism because NYU has a great Jewish program and department. But I was like, as a Catholic, I was like, I don't know anything about Judaism, but Jesus was Jewish. So that seems like a big loophole here. And I was very devout in my own way about my religion. And then I started studying the origins of the Catholic Church, and basically it's called early Christianity is how it was put into a framework. It was actually taught by a priest, a Catholic priest. And he said, I'm not going to go into anything today, but if you are not okay with questioning the framework of your religion, if you feel really good about that and you don't want to touch it, you don't want to question it, you don't want it tarnished in any way and how it's set up for you right now, if it's really working for you, you need to leave the class, because we're going to go into the history of what was going on at that time and like what the politics were and why this gospel was written. And by the way, like when that gospel was written, and whether that person who wrote that gospel ever even met Jesus, and like how far down the telephone line are those words written from the actual like day they were said, for example, if they were said. And I was like, okay, please. Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, whatever. Yes, of course I want to take this class. So I took the class and I was just like, what? It blew, not in a bad way, but in a really like beautiful, oh, this is the truth under that thing. And at the same time, I'm really it solidified the bottom line for me of Christianity, which is a big the truth of of Jesus. That's like a big part of me. And I think also because of the traditions of the people that I am made up of, like my blood, right? But I'm also studying at the same time Southeast Asian art and learning about Buddha and Hinduism. And like I'm looking at all of it and seeing how it all connects into this one story. I started finding more permission, I think, in what I believed in, like those voices I was hearing. And it healed a lot of trauma too, I think, that I had on my own, that I had picked up, even though my mother actually, we would go to church and she would say things like, this part of the prayer you don't say because it's actually against women. And then some of it, she was like, I mean, if you believe that to be true, I don't believe that to be true. And so I always had this, there was some flexibility there, but of course you're there, you're like, I was not supposed to have sex until I was married. And that was like very big. And then I have a Sicilian father who literally at one point, these poor kids, like I was dating this guy, my boyfriend, when I was in ninth grade, came to pick me up, and my father came outside with a BB gun that looked like a rifle. And he's a Sicilian dude in town from Sicily, and people like, and he drove a black Mercedes. So it was like, he's in the mafia was like the story. People thought that about my dad too. It's not true, but he used it for his benefit when I started dating to scare the hell out of people. So there was like, I had some guilt on myself that kind of divorced me from aspects of Catholicism. And then researching and learning about these different religions. And I read this book that changed my life, I believe. It's by the monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who wrote a book called Living Buddha, Living Christ. And he shows the similarities with Buddhism and the words of Jesus. And it was so healing to my body and to my nervous system, because it came from such a place of like love, and also of checking in with yourself and not having to go through a system outside of yourself to have any kind of enlightenment or connection with God. And for myself, Mary is just like a really big, she's very strong within me, and I can feel into her energy and her compassion, where it's a real gift that I use. And in the beginning too, I think with my work, I tiptoed, especially being in LA. It was, if I mentioned Mary or like my own Catholicism, I think it freaked people out. So thankfully, I had the toolkit to be like, oh, and I actually have a degree in Judaism, and we can go down that path and look at the different people, different elders, and like those words. And so I've been able to, again, my whole focus is just helping people. So it doesn't matter to me what religion it is or no religion. And now I think it's interesting being here in Nashville. I really have been a bit shocked by to be like, oh, this is the Bible Belt. And the work that I do can be really scary for some people who are coming from this like real belief that any of these things are, it's devil worshiping. And I have all this knowledge on where that's coming from for people. And then I have my like lived experience of the liberation and the real glory to God is how I would put it. And remembering that you are like a holy being within yourself. And that does not, there is no competition between that truth and God. Because I think that's where people get really hit like with it, right? It's who do you think you are?
Yeah, definitely. Do you say that's one of sort of your biggest current challenges that you're navigating? I know that like Marie and I've talked about this at length, sort of like that stigma specifically in this location, but then just I talked about it before where it's like that othering, but here it can feel very prominent depending on who you're around and where you are. And so I think that's a really interesting sort of challenge to figure out like how do we create these spaces where we're reinforcing these are different tools that you can access. Expansiveness is expansiveness. You can take what resonates, you can leave what doesn't. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sign on to everything that I believe, just as I don't have to
Sure.
sign on to everything that you believe.
Yeah, I would say that. I was really, when I say humbling, like I'm from Massachusetts, which people think, oh, Massachusetts it's a progressive state. You guys, the Tea Party, all of these things. Yeah. And it's very puritanical. There are ways you are and the ways you are not.
Yeah.
And the system that's built upon is very literally, it's from the pilgrims and it's
Yeah.
still alive today.
Which trials were like, let's not forget.
Yes. Yeah, totally. So I was like, oh, well, I know how to navigate that world. I'm good. And then I got here, and especially because we have not lived in Nashville itself, but we have lived in Williamson County, and which I love for my kids. But I don't have, I have a different experience down here than I think some of my friends who are like in East Nashville do.
Yep. As someone who's been in Nashville, I definitely, I would agree. I've spent some time in Williamson County too. It's very different.
Yeah. Yeah. And even like I had told Marina, I think like I was trying to find some help just a couple of days a week, like someone to come while I'm home to watch my kids. And I take that like really seriously. And when I was telling you about the babysitter that might have dimmed my light, I had some really weird babysitters growing up. And so I'm probably extra protective around about who's around my kids. So I'm like interviewing, I do like a phone interview, Zoom, because I want to feel their energy and look at their face and read them. And then if they pass that, come see our house. And I had over and over again these weird experiences of people basically calling me a witch and having this judgment where I'm like, what? Oh, I was not prepared for that. So yeah, I would say that's a challenge. When it first started happening, I was like really hit by it. And it really bothered me. And I talked about it a lot. And then I realized, like, oh, I'm perpetuating this story and I'm just pulling that energy around myself. So I let it go a bit. And I'm at that place now too. And part of it is, again, like that fiery side of myself where I'm just like, fuck off if you like me. If you don't, like, that's fine too. If you like me, great. Let's be friends. If you don't, like, I don't care. So that's why I was really honored to connect with you guys and to be like, oh, this could be part of I don't have to go back to LA and like Miami to have those worlds for myself anymore. Maybe this is an option.
Yeah.
I know that you turned 40 this year and I'm turning 40 tomorrow. And I was literally talking to a friend about how with each decade you give fewer and fewer fucks.
Oh. 40 is so awesome. Like, I was talking to somebody around who was it? Around my birthday. And I was saying, I'm so sorry for your older generation. It was someone older. I forget who this was. It was my aunt, I think. But I was like, I get to really be happy about turning 40 for myself at least, I feel great about it. And I don't feel like sexually, like something's off, like I'm too old, or I don't have any of that bullshit. I'm just like, oh, I get to do whatever I want. I have the freedom and I just don't have to worry about the nonsense. And if you want to throw nonsense at me, like something within myself has reached a point where I don't care anymore. And I'm actually just going to turn my cheek and it's authentic. It's the best. I'm so excited for you.
It's very much probably your aunt or whoever it was. It's very much like a societal conditioning thing. Whereas now we're like, look out, because here I come. I'm curious, Marguerite, before baby Marguerite, I say in quotation marks, in Knoxville, like doing the Reiki and like starting down this professional path, what's one thing you wish you knew then?
Yeah. I think I catered. This is like a storyline that I have within myself that actually is now dead now that I'm 40, right? But there was this part of me that really was trained to make things more comfortable for other people and worry about myself second. And so in the beginning of my practice, I'm not the person that has, the cutesy kind of aesthetic around my work, like the tarot card person, but it's like all crystals and pink and pastel colors. And that's who I am. And you don't have to be scared of me. I never had that because I couldn't do that because that didn't feel right. But I did have this feeling of like, I work with that dark energy. I'm really good with that. That's the importance of being fierce within the dark because the love and light thing is great. But within the spiritual realm, like you have to be able to have boundaries and strength and power and remember that power to deal with the dark because the dark is just as like present as the light. We pull in the light is more powerful, but like you need to work with the dark. And in the beginning of my work in this world, I think I kept that on the back because I was afraid that it would scare people. And that's actually one of my biggest gifts in my work and like of my service is being able to be like, no, I'm going to cord cut that fucker out of your life. And we're not just going to like love and light it because that'll work for a week. And then that person or you'll get triggered again. Like we need to get it at the root. Whatever I'm doing, tarot, anything. So I think in the beginning I cared about making people feel comfortable first because I thought that was where my service was gonna bring the most healing. And I think actually that's not true. I think the more authentic you can be, the better. And maybe that means that your roster starts out a little smaller when it comes to clients, but the people that you work with when you are more authentic, get the best benefit. And then those people will tell of like whatever it is that you do. We're not selling like a drink where it's like, make it the most palatable for these people so that more people will buy it. No, this is like soul level work. I got to be right with my soul and I got to be like as honest as possible so that this works for you. And if it doesn't, then you can go to the person that's going to talk to you about amethyst and rose quartz under your pillow and stuff. And that's awesome. But that's just a different channel than my work. Yeah.
I resonate with that, especially in the beginning when I would start doing chart readings because I'll do astrology. You want to share the good stuff, and it's harder to talk through the more challenging aspects of someone's chart or where you're seeing like, oh, this month, of course, it's really hard, but that's often why people are coming to you for the work in the beginning, right? There's a challenge that they're dealing with that they need that help with. And it's facing that shadow and diving in that gets them to where they need to go. So I definitely think that is like a superpower for sure of being able to, if someone's making that step to be like, I'm ready to do some work, I don't know what that work is. And then you meet them with, this is the work that we need to do. Like you can co-create some really amazing stuff with that.
Yeah.
All of that really, you do so much energetic work. What is one ritual or self-care practice that you do to sort of maintain that, right? If you're expending all this energy, cord cutting, working with all these things, what's your go-to spiritual hygiene move?
It's shifted, but recently, and it's been so profound, is, so I told you we were in Italy recently with my parents, and we hadn't seen my family in Italy since COVID. So it was like we were there for quite a while, and I often didn't have any Wi-Fi on my phone. And it was so like incredible. I knew I had an addiction to my phone, and I knew it's tough too when you have a baby and like you're putting your kids to sleep and like you're exhausted and like now your phone's there and you open your app and like you're getting dopamine hits instead of whatever. I think it has gotten a little bit worse for me as since having kids because it's like this other world outlet that exists. So I knew I had this thing with social media and I knew that it was draining me. And this last year has been really hard just for things that I believe in strongly and then social media behind it. And so I didn't have Wi for the first week. And then I said to my husband, I'm going to stop trying to find Wi-Fi. Why? I don't even care. I'm not, there are no, I'm not working with clients right now. Literally my entire family is in this room or my parents are in the other room. I got everybody here. So I'm not using my phone for 2 weeks. And then I got back and I had this anxiety about having to turn my phone back on. And I realized, oh, I don't actually have to. And it was like, can I do that? Like most of my clients are out there in that world in social media. That is how I create an income. So I continued it for a while and it has been hugely effective in my energetic hygiene. It's like I basically I did it long enough where I reset my brain to not be searching for that thing. Cause it was like I would tell myself, you are not allowed to go on your phone. You are not doing that. Look, these are the studies. I gave myself all the information, right? And it didn't work because my brain would do this thing without me wanting it to. But I reset those pathways and I stopped needing that hit. And it has changed everything, especially I think right now with the election and with all of this stuff. It was becoming so heightened that I would feel it in my body. So yeah, that's been my biggest thing. I would have, if you had asked me that 2 months ago, I would have said, oh, I take Epsom salt baths like a crazy person.
Same.
I have a yeah, I have it's the only thing on Amazon that I have as like my subscription.
subscribe-
I would say magnesium flakes as I go through it so much. And I do love that, especially if I'm doing cord cutting work. I ask it to exit anything that is sticking to me in my field or in my body because I do feel salt works on the field as well, the energetic field. So I will do baths, but get off social media as much as you
Digital
can.
detox is where it's at. Which, speaking of, where can people find out more of what you do, even if you're not regularly on social media?
You know what was wild though? And I want to tell this, I just want to like scream this to everybody who has a business that works through social media is I got off social media, right? I did not go look at it even. I deleted it from my phone because I couldn't trust my brain. And then I started getting emails nonstop, truly once a day from brands that wanted to partner with me through my social media. And I was like, at first I thought I was like, oh, for some site has given up my email, I guess. And then I started looking at them a little bit more when I got back from Italy. I was going through there. I was like, no, these are all real. This is all happening exactly when I got off and I changed my energetic frequency of myself as a person. And also as my brand online, because my brand was carrying this angst that I was feeling. And not just my brand, but my I have two. I have my practice, Casa della Madre, and then I have Marguerite Insolia on Instagram. So you can find me on either one of them. I'm more active on Marguerite Insolia. But yeah, they feel it. You can feel it through the digital space when someone's taking care of their energy field and like really consistently doing it. And you can actually, I believe there's some kind of system here that I will figure out where I can hold really beautiful energetics and touch into social media and create that lot, have that channel open. Mostly, I would say if people want to get in touch, Casa della Madre, Home of the Mother. And you can DM me on there.
Last question for you, Marguerite, putting you on the spot, but who else would you recommend that we interview?
Oh my gosh, Lindsay.
I knew you were going to say Lindsay.
Yeah, our friend Lindsay, whether it's true or not, I feel like it's pretty rare that someone can do circles around me intellectually, but she
Mhm.
blows me away with how smart she is, and also how how her heart comes out in it, in that in her sharing information. Like she delivers it in such a beautiful, compassionate way. She blows me away. So I think she's a great candidate.
You too. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us away, taking time away from your babies and your work. And we're excited to have you at the conference as well.
Hey, me too. Thank you guys. Thank you, both of you.
We hope you loved that conversation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, review this episode. We appreciate it so much, and we will see you next time.